So the hardest thing to adjust to is learning to communicate kind of indirectly with the Steam controller. Like I said, and I'm just going to beat this dead horse throughout the whole conversation, is you never see the left stick was wiggled, you never see the right pad was clicked, you never see A button was pushed. What you get is your actions. For me, this required me to, whoops, hang on, back. This required me to redesign my inputs a little bit to enable controller support, but it created a much cleaner system, and it's going to really help me when I finish porting Defender's Quest to consoles, because I was able to divorce all the spaghetti code deep in my thing. The other thing to mention is that it's entirely a C++-based API, and the reason I mention that is because especially if there's some indie developers out here that are using some non-C++ language like C#, in my case I'm using Hax, you might be using something else, you're probably going to have to use some sort of API bridge to reach the Steam API. And so the Steam API itself, as far as I've been able to tell, is very efficient, but your API bridge might not be, so you should be aware of the abstraction that comes with your API bridge and make sure that it's really good. I wrote my own Steam controller extension for Hax, you can too, it's not too hard, but just keep that in mind if you're using something other than C++. You can still use it, but you want your bridge to be good. The API is based entirely around integer handles for controllers, actions, action sets, everything really. For those of you, C++ aficionados, that will come as no surprise. For those of you who are a little newer to things, who thought you might be like using strings directly, it's not really the way it works. And lastly, the API encourages you to poll continuously. This is not an API where you set a callback and wait for an event. This is an API where you're like constantly every frame getting the state of everything. And that's important to do. And the documentation for the Steam API kind of assures me that it's like, hey, these are cheap calls, this is safe to do. It's not going to leak or, just like cause your fan to turn on to 1,000,000 degrees. So you should do this every frame. But like I said, if you're using an API bridge, make sure that it's not adding some bad overhead to that.